there's a reason why those programs are 2 years long, because the studies show, the science is that it takes approximately 2 years to rebuild the new neural pathways in the mind and restructure your thought process. People are just like, oh, it's too long. No, it was designed that way for a particular reason. And that's what the studies show. And a lot of people coming out of the 30-day treatment, when I tell the parents, I'm like, look, this is just the beginning. Even if they're abstinent from alcohol and other drugs, you're still going to see a lot of the same patterns of behavior, communication, resistance. A lot of the arguments are still going to be there. And it took a while, and people don't like to hear that. It's like if I was starting a business, I hired a business coach, and he said, Kyle, this is going to take a couple years. You better hunker down and get ready. Because in my mind, I was like, oh, in a few months, I can launch this thing. Nope. He's like, no. You do it right, it's going to take a few years. And I didn't want to hear that, but that's exactly what I needed to hear, was somebody get raw and real with me. Take it away with anything you want to add to that.
I mean, I totally agree with that on the whole 2-year stance, because I had done 30 day after 30 day after 30 day. And, with all best intentions, everybody that work in that program, because I helped in that program, the majority of them will tell you a 30-day program is a patch. And what the patch is it's to get you through the next few months. Where a 30-day program really comes in play, and my own personal opinion, is somebody who's had a long stint of sobriety, and somewhere along the way they screwed up, and they just need to get right back on the path. They need to refocus their minds and everything like that. And to me personally, that's where the 30-day program is most helpful.
You don't really establish a new self-identity within 60 days. Within that first, let's just say a typical 30-day program, you're getting in there, you're having a slight psychic shift where you're seeing other people have, like in the process groups, you're starting to hear, hey, their stories are similar to mine. I'm not different. I'm not anything different. That helps. You're getting out of the denial. You're actually learning about the disease and the mental obsession and the allergy, and kind of getting a framework for addiction as a whole. But congruent behavior, establishing a new identity set around health and wellness, rebuilding my integrity and self-esteem, and having behavior that is reinforced that takes time, and you need group accountability and someone to hold you accountable, because how am I going to look at my own defects of character? I'm the one that has had them my whole life. I'm not even really aware of them.
Yeah, because my defects aren't defect. What you see as a defect isn't a defect to me, because that's what I've been doing for 47 years. So now all of a sudden you're telling me I'm wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was kind of hard to swallow in Senate at times. I'm not going to lie about that.
In that place, there was accountability where you were forced to say, I don't understand this. I'm going to sit down in this chair and be forced to be quiet and surrender. It was a forced surrender, almost submission, that you're not going to see out there in the average public. You're not going to see in an AA room. You're not going to see in many places where you were literally forced to submit and let go of whatever rationalization and justification you had at the time. Go ahead.
Those type of programs, long-term programs, that's what they have to do, And I'm sorry I keep going on about that, but I'm still a little bit upset with Senate and the closure of the long-term program and everything like that. So yeah, I'm having a little bit of issue getting over it.
New policy procedure of government overreach is forcing the long-term program into the existence of a dodo bird, and now other things, scalable systems, are going to have to come in to fill this service delivery gap, because if there ain't no TC, we got to figure something out, and that's partly what I'm doing on my life mission. And I liked how last time you were saying that your passion in life is helping others and things like that. You can get into any of that.
Definitely. I will go out of my way to help an individual. There's a young lady that I just found out that I'm working with that, somebody just kind of whispered in my ear about her upbringing. They're like, she's 20. She just met her real mom. She's living with her. She gives, anyway, on and on. And then I started noticing some things of how she talks to herself. And when she makes a mistake, she's like, "Oh, stupid," da da da. And I started telling her, hey, you got to quit calling yourself stupid. You've got to give yourself a break. Growing up in an atmosphere that my father didn't mean to be the way he was, it's how he was raised. I was called stupid for a lot of years. So I understand where those complexes come from. And I understand that, when you're saying that to yourself about that, it's because you've repeatedly heard it either over the last few months or over the majority of your life. It's simple little things like that when you just stop and look at somebody and go, hey, quit saying that about yourself. You made a mistake. Now let's move on.
But that's my point, is it actually does require long-term interactions, because there has to be enough situations that you see that person in where they call themselves stupid, to where you can see that, hey, this is a pattern of behavior of yours. Because if you just are in passing or see them one time in an AA meeting and someone goes, oh, I'm being stupid, you might not realize that is an ingrained inner image of self that they are putting out on the world. That's why the mastermind groups, and where people are constantly seeing us do this for long periods of time, are so important, because you're able to identify those patterns. Go ahead.
And that's exactly right. And I think the biggest thing is first identifying the patterns. But it takes time for us to see our own patterns, and especially when we're first coming out of our addiction. Because we see no issue with what we've been doing, because that's normal life.
Sometimes it's easy for us to say, all of my negative patterns were because of the drug use, not realizing that these negative patterns were fully integrated with everything in our lifestyle, on the way we are, all of our relationship dynamics, the way we viewed the world, our coworkers, ourself, institutions of, the government, everything. It was all ingrained. And then just saying, I'm abstinent from alcohol and other drugs, I'm doing great, that's really just the top. We got a lot more stuff we got to look at.
Well, exactly right, because being abstinent and being sober is two different things.
Right.
Because people can be abstinent for a long time, but and they're going, well, but hey, I'm not doing what I used to do. It's like, yeah, you're not in that sense, but in another sense, you have to look at this.
I'm even can explore some of that a little deeper, and that is, there was a period of time where your largest accomplishment in life is that you stayed sober another day, which is just true. Like, I stayed sober one more day, the greatest accomplishment ever. I was going month by month. Now, but eventually your goal has to be more than just to stay sober one more day. Because my family, they would be like, well, what are you doing now? And I'm like, well, I'm staying sober. And then 6 months would pass. They're like, well, what are you doing now? I'm like, I'm still staying sober. That was my whole mindset, was just about staying sober. And it didn't shift into making the healthy, functional transition into society, repairing my credit, doing all these other things. Like, I wasn't worried about that. It was just, I'm going to stay sober for one more day, until people started going like, hey, you've been doing this, taking it one day at a time, just stay sober, and not actually looking at setting meaningful goals in your life and some kind of action plan to improve.
That was pointed out to me whenever I went to work for Synacor, as I was still celebrating monthly birthdays and everything like that. And I had a counselor pull me to the side, and they said, quit counting. They said, because when you count, they said, it just makes things worse. And they said, and you're not doing anything but biding time for yourself when you're counting. They said, now it's time to start making some of those other changes that you want. What is it that you want to do? It's like, we know you want this car. We know that you want this. We know that you want that. You want to go back to school. So what do you got to do in order to make those changes? That was probably some of my hardest times right then. I was embarrassed at the fact that I was 45 years old and I didn't know how to fill out a college application, And I was embarrassed at the fact that, I was 45 years old and had only ever really paid off one card my entire life, and the rest just kept going back. I was embarrassed about those things. It's the old saying, the only thing you have to change is everything,
That's a good one. When they started going like, hey, now what are these other changes you're going to make? And you started having to focus on repairing my credit, paying off debt, actually getting transportation, going through the process of like getting your license reinstated, all these things that like all of a sudden now become almost like overwhelming beyond the ability to cope. Do you remember like that, what happened during that transition?
Through Synacor, I had my license, and everything like that. So I was already partially established. I'd had an opportunity to take some Dave Ramsey classes, and try to learn how to manage the money a little bit better, because Lord knows I didn't know how to manage money. I took the opportunities that were given to me, either in Synacor or when I first came out and went to work for the company, and taking the knowledge of the individuals that were willing to give it to me and just say, hey, teach me as much as you can, because, I need help. That was probably one of the most humbling experiences of my life, as having to go to who my direct support was as a young lady that was 15 years younger than me, and telling her, hey, I don't know how to do this because I've never had to do it. Because of where you are in life, can you help me and teach me how to do this? That was a real humbling experience, but it was something that I needed. And especially coming straight out of the program, because I needed to be humbled a little bit on a real world level. I was flying high. I graduated Synacor. I made it through this. I made it through that, and that gave me the opportunity to truly, like you said a while ago, refocus on something instead of just a day-by-day sobriety. It's like, okay, my goal this week is I'm going to have that application filled out, turned in, talk to finance, and find out what I need to do next. So I have 5 days in order to get that done. Come hell or high water. I don't know how it's going to work out, but come hell or high water,